Everybody, good to see you. In a pretty good mood today. And today we're going to talk about mood. I'm just checking to see that the live stream is working there. I always feel like I need to tell you that. It appears that it is going to work. So, we're going to talk about state management. I get this term from the world of neuro-linguistic programming. That goes way back for me, back in 1988. I was in therapy with a wonderful therapist, probably one of the best therapists I ever had. I just lucked out at the beginning. He was a Christian therapist, and he probably had, I don't know, 10, 15 sessions, and then he shared that he studied neuro-linguistic programming. What is that? Well, it was discovered in the 70s by a linguistics professor, John Grinder, and a computer scientist, Richard Bandler. And what's funny is I almost think about it as like Reese's Peanut Butter Cup, where the old commercial, one came with chocolate, the other one came with peanut butter, they crash into each other, and you end up with this wonderful, delightful treat. Neuro-linguistic programming is like that you have the world of computer science and you have the world of linguistics. And what they discovered is that people have unconscious patterns that they do over and over and over. Think programming. There's linguistic programs that if you listen to people's speech, it tells you a lot about what they're going through. They took a journey into looking at which therapists were really, really effective and why were they effective. So they looked at a guy named Milton Erickson, who is a hypnotherapist. I know that might turn some of you off a bit, but he was actually an incredible guy. In fact, boy, I'm doing this again. Do I need to show you a book? Probably not. Okay. I have many of his books, but this is a guy who was afflicted with polio in the late 1800s. As a teenage boy, almost died through the night, but tells the story how he lived through this. He actually said he heard the doctor say outside, actually I'll slow down a little bit because here we are in a pandemic. This is during polio pandemic. There was no vaccine yet. He got it and he's paralyzed, and the doctor says he probably won't make it to sunrise. He heard this in his ear as he's suffering from a horrible situation and says, all I need to do is make it to sunrise and I'll live. He makes it to sunrise. Well, obviously, he lives. He is paralyzed really bad, but he rehabs himself, and then this is incredible. It's actually quite fun to share. So this, I'm going to grab the book. Making you wait. So Milton Erickson was a person who, it's just such a different era. And this is his journals. He has since long passed away. But he felt that as a first of all, he goes on a 1,400-mile canoe trip by himself. And he said that he used this to rehab himself. He was going to go with a friend, but the friend backed out, and he didn't tell his parents because they never would have let him go. And he might have been in his teens or maybe like 20 or something like that. He says he dragged the canoe between lake to lake, and then he just paddled. Like, It warms my heart to think, how would I be if I was paralyzed? Get through that, and I'm going to go on a 1,400-mile trip. And in his writings, he says, being a cripple, he says this is his words. He says, being a cripple, he felt like he wanted to contribute to society and to help things. And he says, I couldn't help out on the farm. That's where he's raised. So he became a doctor. He became a medical doctor. Oh, and then from there, he becomes interested in hypnosis. Well, in that day and age, I'll just use this. This is what we think of hypnosis. Stare into my eyes. You will relax now, And 20% of the people will do that, actually. Other 80% go, yeah, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to do that. Hypnosis can't make people do things they don't want to do. If that were the case, we'd see a lot more cases of it. Where do we see hypnosis mostly? In the media. We watch something like a beautiful piece of chocolate cake being sliced and the moistness of it as that fork goes down. In fact, this is a good example of this as I'm seeing myself on the screen. I'm tasting chocolate cake. I'm feeling like the fork is going down and it's peeling over, and I can put it in my mouth. There is no chocolate cake in my hand, but that's called, in hypnosis talk, a positive hallucination. You're seeing something that is not there. But say like you're seeing it on the screen, for you to have a physical reaction from something you're seeing on a screen, have body reactions, is hypnosis. It's just, people go, but it's an evil world. Well, it can be used evil, but it's used all the time. It's just a phenomenon. How many of us have driven home and we kind of forgot how we got there? It's not a good way to drive, but it's an understandable way to drive because it's unconscious. We use our unconscious minds to drive. When we first learned to drive, we were steering. We were trying to stay in the lines. We were doing a number of things very consciously, but somehow if you do something over and over, it becomes unconscious. And we'll get to how this has therapeutic benefits. So Milton discovered that everybody goes into trance. And that sounds like a creepy word, but trance is just any altered state. And here's a tidbit to help us understand how important this is. If we have problems with psychosis, we might look at that from a hypnotic point of view. If we have a panic attack, we want to see that as from a hypnotic point of view. Like unconsciously, something is happening. I'm having visceral reactions, and I haven't a clue why this, and then you feel like you're dying and it just snowballs. If you are tempted, say like some of us, or some people may be tempted by the internet to look at things they should not look at. Pure hypnosis. That we think that seeing those people do that thing is going to give us pleasure. That's a hypnotic phenomenon. Now, say like I terrorize myself by thinking horrible thoughts. My kids are dead. I'm in my mind seeing them and being put into the ground. Oh, actually, I'm being reactive here, but that would make me want to feel a different state, thinking about if my grown-up daughter and son passed away. Are they passed away? No, not at all. It's just some phenomena that I'm doing in my mind. So all TV is hypnosis. Media is hypnosis. Things that slow us down. Parents reading a story slowly. Once upon a time, there were the three little bears. There was the papa bear, the mother bear, and the baby bear. Why do we read so slowly when trying to help children go to bed, or we talk slower to help someone relax? Because the brain wave is going to follow and it's going to go slower. And we just naturally know that it slows them down. Ocean waves crash in and out at an alpha rhythm. You can barely go to any ocean or hear any ocean without beginning to have your alpha waves in your brain begin to follow sync. So it relaxes us. Okay. It could go on and on and on. I mean, we could do the lemon wedge where you think about a lemon. And actually, I had lemon water yesterday, and I did put a little bit to that. And if I think about putting the lemon wedge there, and sometimes you get a seed there, and sometimes you get that little pulp there, are you salivating? So I just induced a hypnotic experience. So Milton, yeah, he was brilliant. He gets through this. I guess that's enough to show there. But he gets through this hike, this canoe trip, and he becomes a doctor. He saw what so-called hypnosis was doing, and hypnosis had done some really interesting things. In fact, medical hypnosis in India was used by missionaries, where there was no anesthesia for people, and they had to calm them down to give them the best possible experience. And when they did this over and over and over, they got better and better at it. And excuse me, they could get it to the point where the persons had like 50% less pain or almost no pain at all. It felt just like pressure. If you want to talk about hypnosis, Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers has a voice that's very hypnotic. Yeah, I think it was somewhat, he was a musician. He knew that slowing his voice, talking to you right into the camera, using language patterns that saying you're special. Everybody has problems. Well, I can't be Mr. Rogers now, but you get the point that we'll talk about the style of hypnosis that helps and the style of hypnosis that's not so useful. Well, actually, I might as well talk about it now. So Milton was seeing what was called direct hypnosis. If I say, you will stare into my eyes, and as you stare into my eyes, I will count to 3. And at the count of 3, you will feel most relaxed. 1, 2, 3. Now, hopefully you didn't follow all that and go into whatever I was encouraging, but that's direct hypnosis. Okay? And like I said earlier, it kind of only worked some of the time. Milton did indirect hypnosis. What does that sound like? It sounds like this. I'm wondering what it would be like to begin to feel a certain sensation in your body. And for those of us that might have an uncomfortable sensation, I wonder what it would be like to just accept that sensation as it is. And inch by inch to begin to feel just slightly different in a way that's right and comfortable for you. And I'm wondering, as you begin to feel that, you might ponder what it would be like to begin to calm down, begin to relax, to maybe see something you haven't seen before, to think in a different way. Well, I should stop it. I could go on and on. But it's very fluffy language. It's very indirect. I didn't tell a person to relax in any of that mumble jumbo. I just ask questions like, what would it be like if you were to relax? Well, to answer the question, you have to kind of relax. If relax may be too pointed, it may be so directive. So if I say, I wonder what it's like to have a sensation. Well, gee, anybody can have a sensation. If I said, what it's like to have an experience, well, that's very vague. So you're always right as the helper in this. Not that you need to be right, but what happens is when you use that language, the listener says he gets it. Well, because I'm saying words that are so open-ended that then the listener picks what fits for them. So it's useful. And and the eyes are open. There's no direction to try to make someone do anything. You just let the person experience what they experience. So that may be hypnosis. Now, hypnotherapy has a therapeutic outcome, meaning it's trying to help a person feel better, to move from always a stuck state to a resource state. That in NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, that's the most basic it gets. A stuck state is you don't feel good. You feel so powerless. You feel like you're stuck. You feel usually frightened, angry, depressed, hopeless, or cynical, or on and on. It's not a state of strength, it's a state of weakness. Your body won't feel good in this state. And NLP people are trained to be able to calibrate the body of the person they're working with and see where the blood flow is, see how their countenance is. The resource state is any state which helps a person begin to act in a manner as a Christian, closer to God, freer, healthier thinking. The physiology feels better. And so if we look at hypnotic language, it can either produce stuck state or resource state. So we'll give some examples. And I'll give an example of traditional therapy versus some other kinds of therapy. A disease-focused types of therapy will ask questions like, wonder how long you've had this problem. What is the problem? Tell me what the problem is. Describe for me the problem. What have you tried to do to get rid of the problem? Now let's move to resource state. Resource state asks questions like, what is it that you're really wanting? If you got that, if you got what you wanted, what would that do for you? How would that benefit you? Have you experienced this before? And what resources do you have to get there? So you can see where I'm more pro the resource state. I can ask people, what is the problem? And I may ask a little bit to see what that state looks like in their physiology. Physiology involves eye movements, skin coloration, breathing changes. And to be dramatic, it's kind of like if I talk about a problem state, you'll notice the breathing gets constricted. I'm trying to think of an example. Oh, well, I had an example. It's a very small one, but it was interesting. So I've been taking my blood glucose just because I know a little bit about this, and I think that gaining weight, which I've done, and insulin spikes during stressful times, lack of exercise and food, it's very complex, and cortisone goes up, so can insulin. So I took my blood and it was going around 100. It's like, I don't like 100. I mean, I want it lower. I did it another day, and it went to 126. And I did a double take. Like, okay, part of me didn't believe it. Like, I didn't believe it because 126, my priest said that he had, if it's over 120, you have diabetes. And it's like, ah. So I was in a state of panic. And as you can just notice my physiology when I talk about this. My breathing is different. I feel tense. Notice how I'm just naturally curled up. I don't want diabetes. I don't want, I know too many and all that stuff. And you can see I can barely talk about this. And I was stuck on that for about a couple of hours, I will confess. Yeah, I was going about my life, but I was thinking that was shocking to me because I'd never seen it like that. Oh, actually, not a couple of hours. I take this back. Talk about strange story. I am prone to dehydration. I have had a colon surgery, which they did say that I would be prone to dehydration. So here's the other part of the story. Yeah. So I decide my numbers have been known to be off because of dehydration from other things. I drank 5 glasses of water. And this was before church, so I decided not to do things as I normally would. I retook it and went down to 90. So, and that was within 20 minutes. So, was it 126 or was it 90? It made it a little bit better and realized this could be an off thing, but still 126 is not good. And how many days did I really do this without drinking lots of water? So, this will all get wrapped up. And so I was in a stuck state, but I snapped myself out of it. And it's partly, and I'm not perfect at hardly anything, but I will say that after a while as a therapist, you have to learn to break your state. You have to learn to shift gears, as well as just as a person. If you get stuck in a cycle, it just snowballs. It just gets worse and worse and worse. It's a form of a trance. The worse you feel, the worse you feel. And the more scared you get, the more you have thoughts that are very open-ended. Like, I wonder what might happen in the future. Oh my gosh, what is happening to me? Now, specific language breaks trance, if you will. If I said to myself, you got a 126 because you got a false reading. What's happening to me? Erik, you just have a little bit of shock because you got something you didn't want. That's all. That's right. We terrorize ourselves with thoughts that are hypnotic, saying, I wonder when the next bad thing will happen. We don't say it consciously, but it's very unconsciously. Well, guess what? It's self-fulfilling. If you think the next bad thing is going to happen, just wait sooner or later. And if you're living on planet Earth, it's going to happen. So if I say, let's use some of the language for good, because you can see the beauty of it. And I get a lot of this from Milton Erickson. If I said to people I work with, you're going to feel better by this Thursday, people are going to doubt that. They're going to wonder, like, how do you know? If I were direct and say, by the count of 3, you will begin to feel better. I'm using begin. You will feel better. Yeah. If I say, I'm not sure when you're going to feel better, but I do know that you will feel better, or you will begin to feel better eventually. Now, it's not really trick. It's not trying to be a mind game, but it actually always works. Because I'm being honest, I don't know the future. No one does. I do know you're going to feel better. I believe that with all my heart. Yeah, I do, because people do feel better eventually. That's comforting. The unconscious mind absorbs that and says, that's right. If I use a phrase that, like, right now, you're not feeling so well, stuck state, but eventually you're going to feel better. So that's putting a step in where I'm at, and eventually I'll feel better. So, right when I got the 126 reading, yeah, I wasn't feeling good, but I knew I would feel better, and I knew it's not the end of my life because, gee, I'm not even diabetic. All the other numbers are kind of fine. But this is how things can happen. You take one thing and blow it way out of proportion, and you don't even realize it's self-hypnosis. So I went to church, I prayed, I said, I am not going to let this ruin my day for sure. No, I'm just going to focus on loving God, and God's in control. And say, like, I end up with diabetes, I guess I would have to accept that the first couple of days I'd be kind of not feeling good. But if I get into a resource state, it's the resource state is not the absence of problems. It's the resources to deal with the problems. So many people want kind of an exterminator approach to get rid of any problem, just extinguish it, extinguish the problems. That's not real life. It's kind of like sanitizer. Let's just sanitize our living daylights where there's not a living germ on there. Well, that's unrealistic. It's probably better to think more healthy and to say, life has difficult things. It's how life is. If I have the strength that I need to deal with that, and I have God's love and peace to help me deal with that, that so gives me so much what I need that the problems seem smaller, the anxiety seems smaller, the depression seems smaller. It still may be there, but it's manageable by me not managing it, by letting my hands be open. So I was using hypnotic language in that. It's very vague what I just shared, but it feels specific. It's presupposing that there is a resource that I can acquire that will help me tackle or deal with anything that comes my way. And so the gist of any session, and not every session is like that. Sometimes problems need to be opened up and you only have an hour. But for the most part, I like to try to help people understand that their real issue is to move from a stuck state to a resource state. And sometimes it's hand-holding. And it's okay. I think it's really, we all struggle. We all have stuck states from time to time. The only difference between me and people that don't know is I just know the training about the stuck state. I know I can see the world through this lens and help someone move from here to here. It doesn't mean I don't have stuck states, but once you know that, then you move through them faster. Why people pay some good money to come see me, because they don't even know what they don't even know, and they need the tools to move from stuck state to resource state. So instead of focusing on not being depressed, I'll demonstrate how we use this all the time, because I work a lot with Christians, and Christians really struggle with the whole hypnosis thing, and it's okay. I mean, they can either accept it or not. I would suggest stop watching any kind of TV. Don't do anything that looks like chanting or repetitious prayer or anything repetitious, because I unconsciously get up and sit in a chair. I don't have to rethink what a chair looks like every day. I just know that it is, and so it's so built in us. But say like we're praying for someone, and someone has a knee problem, and we'll say it's Tom, and I wouldn't say, hey, let's pray for Tom. So, dear Lord, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, help Tom not to feel the bone against bone scraping against each other. Help him not to feel that ice pick jabbing sensation that's shooting up his leg. To help him not to experience that burning sensation. No, we would never do that. In fact, it's in our, we just almost know not to say the thing that would make things worse. Say like someone's vomited. We don't talk about it because it's so inducing, we all would feel sick to our stomach. No, we go the opposite direction. We say, give him the comfort he needs. Help him to truly trust in you in this difficult time. We pray for healing, and Lord, we don't know when you will grant the healing, but we know that you are a healing God. Lord, give us the patience we need. Give us the love we need. Give us the trust we need. We need you so much. In fact, we don't even know what to ask of you, but please give that to us. We ask this in your precious holy name. Well, first of all, when I was praying that, I was actually feeling like there were things in my life I needed to pray for. And it's not about emotionalism, but if you look at ancient prayers or prayers that are Orthodox or just Christian prayers, they're vague. The serenity prayer, grant me serenity over the alcohol which I cannot change. No, it says the things I cannot change. Well, that's vague. So you pick as a prayer or a listener what fits. And the courage to change the things I can. So it's not even defining what courage is. It's expansive that way. And the things that I need to look at or whatever, and the wisdom to know the difference. If you read the Psalms are very hypnotic. How so? Well, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me he leads me in green. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leads me in green pastures beside still waters. Boy, my brain's kind of, part of it is I'm on the spot. The green pastures we know are not literal pastures. Still waters, he's not really going to answer the prayer by having me go by Lake Stevens and be by still waters. We know that's metaphorical. All metaphor is hypnotic. It just is. That's why Jesus spoke in parables. I'll confess to you, I'm getting a distraction with that light above my head. It makes me feel like I'm trying to create a halo effect. So I'll explain some method to my madness here. Those who know me might get a kick out of that. Yeah, that's the only halo I'll get. So metaphor is very, very powerful. It can make people feel better when you speak in metaphor. Because if I said to someone how much I love them, and there's a time for that. Well, actually say like they're going through a rough time. And I could say direct words like, you know what, you need to just cheer up. You need to just be strong in the Lord. You need to just not worry so much. Well, thank you. How is that going to help? But if I use a story about, and many famous stories that we all love are hypnotic. You hear a story of someone who goes through a very challenging time, who is so weak, you think that they can't go on anymore. And then they got stronger and got so well. And they were able to do all these wonderful things after they went through their dark night of the soul. That's inspiring to us. Oh, this is used all the time. People that have lost like 200 pounds. We watch where they were before. We see the hard, difficult times of eating more nutritious and exercise. You see their tears. You see how difficult it was. But then when you see them at their weight, you get teary-eyed and you're just so thankful and happy for them. And the suggestion, so we haven't talked about suggestion. The suggestion is, if this person can do it, I can do it too. And I mean, God uses these things. In fact, I had always struggled with my weight, always, always, always. And I was using 12 steps and waiting for the miracle to happen. I had just gotten done with a prayer that emptied myself of, God, I'm really scared. I'm 218 pounds. I saw what it was doing to my parents. The more harder I tried consciously, the worse it seemed to get, which scared me more, which made me tighten my knuckles all the more. I said, whatever. God, I'm done trying. I love you. I think just please help me. Please help me. Please help me. And I had prayed that prayer before, but something snapped. And about 9 things happened in my life. One of them being as I was flipping through channels of The Biggest Loser, the TV show. Never really watched it. But what was I flipping through? These people were huffing, puffing, and I heard the word marathon, and I thought, no way, no way. These people are not running a 26.1 mile marathon. I think that's what it is. No, no, no. And I couldn't believe my eyes. And so I started to watch that little, it wasn't even the whole show. And it's like, well, this is kind of good. I watched another episode, and I'll never forget this. I felt so motivated, like I needed to get up and start moving. I grabbed a treadmill that was out in the garage. I put it in the family room. And I was kind of into, oh no, I don't want to hurt myself and all this stuff. And I was sitting on, this is so funny, so funny. I was sitting on the couch thinking, I better take care of myself because I've had colon surgery, back surgery. I just was pounding that. And Jillian Michael says, if you're sitting on the couch, you got to understand that you are hurting yourself more by sitting on the couch than getting up and moving. I couldn't believe it. I got up and started just going on the treadmill. And that suggestion said to me, that's right, Erik. Sitting on the couch is never going to give me health. I would say if I need to rest, if I need to take a nap, I need that kind of rest. But overall, sitting is not going to help me. Being on a treadmill is not going to hurt me. Does it feel like it could? Certainly. I was good at not working out. But it's not going to hurt me. So I just walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked and walked. I then automatically walked into a gym one day. I mean, very soon. My dad at the time was huffing and puffing going to a gym, and something snapped in me. And I see this as God's providence, is that if he, at whatever age he was, in his 70s, was going to a gym with all his problems, why am I not going to a gym when I'm able-bodied? Went to the gym. It was so easy. So easy. Like, I thought maybe I was losing weight. I just did what the guy told me. And I won't go into this because I could probably share another episode. The point with hypnosis is that I had snapped out of a trance. It's like I was living in this slothful, fearful, dark, I'll confess this, and this is really cool hypnotic language to see how the negative hypnosis works, is that I really thought, well, maybe I'll get, because when you try for, I'm 58 now, it's been about 10 years, so I was probably in my I was thin by my 50th birthday, so it was in my 40s. When you tried all your life and you keep on failing, you think, well, I'll probably die with this. And so I thought, well, maybe if I'm dying from cancer, as I'm losing weight, I'll get to my ideal weight. And in my morbid thought, I thought, well, quick, snap a picture. Shows my vanity. So I was losing about 2 pounds a week. It seemed too easy. I was eating about 1,700 calories. That was another story from how I did that. I exercised. I didn't feel that taxed. I felt better and better. Um, I just had such a breakthrough, and I was attributing it all to God's grace, all to my surrender to God. But I stopped telling myself that, well, gee, I thought I would have this the rest of my life, but gee, what do I get? I know anything can happen. There's a good phrase, anything can happen, could be used for, oh no, anything could happen. The coronavirus, and this is funny. Last night I watched a TED talk about how we could have a global, not global, but a big blackout where we all lose electricity. I've heard of this before, but this guy just said a few things. Here, I'll just show you what this does to you. He said, yeah, it doesn't take much. And so what will happen? Well, our refrigerator would go dead. And so we're going to lose our food in 3 days. And we had that happen, so that was close to home. But we had ice buckets and stuff. The grocery stores, all those foods are going to spoil within about 3 days. Oh. The sewer system will back up because there's no pumps. It's going to get into the groundwater. And now we won't have any water to drink. And we don't really have a backup system. He went on, and it didn't take more than just a few minutes to have me start to go into a negative state, a stuck state. And he used really good metaphor. He actually used stories from the past. He started the TED Talk by saying, we are really good at not listening to warnings. And then he cited the Titanic and a whole bunch of things. And it's like, yeah, that's right. And then I just immediately thought of the pandemic where we were warned, and look how that turned out. So I thought, okay, so there's a new thing to worry about. A total state changer. So do I want to spend the rest of my evening pondering that and getting stuck there? No, I take the information in, but I need to pray, connect with God, ask Him, what is it that He wants me to do specifically about that possibility, or let go of the things I cannot change. Now, the anything can happen can be a good thing too. And back to my story with weight. Like, I never, ever thought I'd be able to keep my weight down, I'll say easily, for nine years. Now, I did gain some weight, and I'm just planning on using the same principles to lose weight. I think there's a difference here in that because of stress levels with global stress, I think all of us are going to gain some middle fat, and it's really cortisone related, and so we've got to learn how to manage our cortisol levels. So I'm actually taking some adrenal formula and burning off the cortisone and limiting how many people I see, and etc. Just self-care. So hypnosis is all around us, and we do get into stuck states, and we can get into resource states, and it's by our language that does this. So how many of us are using phrases like, oh no, what is going to become of me? What else could happen? And notice, they're vague. If I say, oh no, I'm going to gain more weight, that could still trigger me, but it's so specific. If I say, oh no, what else could happen to me, then that's very vague. What if, very hypnotic. Oh, this is a really good one. Like language that induces sicknesses. I'm not feeling well. Or you probably have seen something on media where they say, "Are you feeling well? Do you don't look well." And then the person starts to get sick. That's just suggestion. And since we're on that topic, let's talk about drug commercials. You know, they'll show you a pan of water where it's sloshing over the sides. And then they say, "Do you struggle with irritable bladder syndrome?" And you see a person dancing, holding themselves. That's just inducing general hypnosis so that you go buy their product. And if you don't believe me there, let's talk about allergy medicine. It's not by accident that I won't name the what is it called, the company, but there was this person playing tennis and it looks good enough. And then you see this huge flower shooting pollen, like it's shooting pollen and the screen goes yellow. Well, that image starts to make you have sinus issues. I remember being in a movie theater one time, and my eyes, I had contacts, and they were getting drier, drier, drier. It's like someone's smoking in here. And then I realized they were smoking in the, the, the movie screen. And I'm having a reaction, a histamine reaction based on what I'm seeing. And this happens all the time when I've helped people through allergy things. It's not the main thing I do, but neuro-linguistic programming will ask people with allergies like bee stings or allergies, how do you represent this in your mind? And they go, well, what do you mean? But the more they talk about it, they go, well, I do look at the pollen count and I start to see yellow. It triggers them. And we know this. Yeah, boy, I'm really on a roll here. I've had friends. They say, I'm allergic to dust mites, my allergist says. Look at this. Well, you have this big picture of a dust mite. Well, of course you're going to end up with that. Because any allergy is a phobic reaction that the immune system has. So that's how we induce, and we don't do it on purpose. It's strange. We try to protect ourselves by terrorizing ourselves. We think that if I predict the worst outcome, then that'll protect me somehow. But I'm just going to struggle with that. Other ways we say, like, I will never find love. There is never going to be anybody right there for me. My spouse and I will never get along. Look how long we have tried to overcome our difficulties and it never seems to work out. I'm using that slow speech to show you these are trances. She says she loves me, but does she really? It just seems like she loves me. Self-pity is a form of self-hypnosis. Like, let's look at all the things that Erik has suffered. I've suffered some illnesses, some surgeries, a childhood that was not what I wanted. I could go on, I won't go in because it would seem silly and maybe too revealing, but the thing is, when we do that, we make ourselves sick. Oh, we can make ourselves sick by thinking, wow, I just don't feel right after eating that. I wonder what it could be. And I worked with lots of kids that would vomit at will. I mean, it was sad, but they just started to think. And the family was afraid to even mention it in the office. And it had me going, I'm ready to get a trash can nearby because that's how suggestible they were. Working with this really shocked me. I guess I can share another story. I was learning how to do hypnotherapy where I was really learning it. And I flew out to Austin, Texas, and flew back. It was like a 3-day training, and the style was just to experience it. And being a dedicated Christian, which I still am, I was very conscientious and cautious of all this. I didn't want to do anything that would be not pleasing to God. Well, I made it down there, and I learned some scripts. And at the time, my wife and I were going to have our first child, my daughter, or our daughter, and we were going to class, childbirth class. And what are they doing? Teaching you breathing exercises. Again, it's all around you once you start to think about it this way. And I said, well, why don't we just hypnotize yourself to sleep? And so every night I would use phrases like, and I didn't do this much. This is so weird. I maybe did it maybe 5 times. And I would say, I wonder what it would be like to feel the best you could feel during the childhood experience or childbearing experience. I would say God is going to be with us. He is. He loves us. I wonder what it would be like to feel pressure rather than pain. It might feel good to, and I'm talking faster, I did it much more slower. I wonder what it would be like to feel, to breathe this way. With every breath, you might be able to let go of any stress. Notice stress versus pain. You relabel things. Anyway, the day that she was ready to give birth, and you have to understand my wife, a dear, strong person. I mean, she's very strong. But with this, she was kind of nervous. And she says, give me an epidural right when we get to the hospital. It was kind of a joke. Well, she went into labor, but she didn't think she was in labor. This is really a hilarious story now that I think about it. I said, well, I think it's time. She says, no, it's our first. This is just, I don't know, these Braxton Hicks. I said, well, I think we ought to go to the doctor. Okay, and then I'm timing things. And she says, no, there's no timing. And then she says, it just feels good to breathe this way. And it's like, And then the funny thing is, I said, well, aren't you in pain? She says, no, it just feels like pressure. So then we go to the doctor's office. And she says, Erik, what would feel really good is if I could be on my hands and all fours, it sounds horrible, and just put the pressure on the back. I said, well, if anything, it'll get us into the doctor sooner. So here we are. We're in the lobby. No one else is there, but I'll just say my wife is there, and I'm putting pressure on her back. Well, I think it did get us in there sooner. So anyway, they walk in, and they examine her and says, oh my gosh, congratulations, you're in transition. You're going to have this baby. So she panics. She says, I can't have this baby. Oh no, Erik, help. I said, look, and I wasn't even that skilled as a hypnotherapist at the time. I said, look, you've been doing this automatically without knowing in your labor. I'm sure you'll be able to do this automatically from now. And she goes, okay, and we get into the car, hop in the car, drive across the street. She goes down into the lobby. It was like palace gates opening up for us. We just walked right in. She gets on the bed. It was the brand new room, and so some nurses putting up sheets for curtains. And she pushes the baby out. And 30 minutes later, she's eating a steak, looking at TV. That was a trip. Now, I won't go into some of it. It was painful. And I have no idea what her pain was like. So I'm not going to say it was. But what we do know is that fear causes the parasympathetic response to not happen. And that's why then labor often stops. That's why the medical community in great wisdom decided to have all the classes at the hospital so that you've already been there many times. And so that in the old days, you would have just come and the very first time you see the hospital, you get nervous and then you stop labor. So, and that's why the relaxation exercises and all this. So that's what happens is you just waltz in and have the baby. And that, did that give me confidence? Oh, yes. I realized that it's not really about the practitioner. I mean, you need some skill, and not everybody should be doing hypnotherapy, I believe. But we all hypnotize each other every single day. And once you know what the language patterns are, like if I said to my wife, hope your day doesn't go too rough today, she's going to sort reality looking for how things are rough. If I say, I hope your day goes smooth today, I hope you find God's love and strength today, then that's how she's sorting reality. So when we are not in a good state, we often get stuck there. And the problem is we need help to nudge ourselves out of it. And it's like, how do you not think of the pink elephant? And that's kind of a positive, neutral thing. But if I say the negative, it just terrifies us. It scares us. It can take our breath away. So what we need is to somehow get the skill to move into the resource state, which is, I'm not going to think about this. I'm going to go to church. In my case, I'm going to go to church. I'm going to focus on how God is in control of everything. I'm going to ponder how good he has been to me. And there's not one bad thing that's really ever happened to me. And I could get teary-eyed saying that, but and that's hypnotic language, by the way. There's not one thing that's ever bad that's happened to me. Because I'm going to say this, is that everything that's bad has turned into good. That puts such a good strength in me that then I won't be terrorized by a pandemic or the end times or persecution for people of faith or whatever. Because I realize God's strength with me. It's really like a stuck state is darkness. And here's a metaphor. So I'm telling you how hypnosis is used, so then you can identify it. So I'm going to be talking about light and darkness. Guess what? You will pick what the darkness is for you and what the light is for you. So I'm going to say this now. That is my little preview. It's like this topic is a dark room. A stuck state is a dark room. How can I just fight the darkness? I can't fight the darkness. I can't see in the darkness. I can't see 1 inch in front of me. I can't try to make my eyes try to see better in darkness. It just doesn't work that way. All I need is a little pinpoint of light. It doesn't even need to be much, as you experience this. But my eyes can begin to adjust. I can begin to see. All that I'm focused on now is the light, because that's how light works. And I'm taking the same amount of energy, but I'm focusing on the light. I'm focusing on what's good. And it's what fights the darkness without fighting it, because light just is light. And where there's light, there's clarity, there's love. And that's kind of where we want to be. We want to be in God's light, his love. A common thing that people ask is, how do I trust God? How do I trust that anything's going to get better? If I use metaphor, it helps. If I talk too specific, it can actually make it worse, because the person goes, well, that didn't happen and that didn't happen. But I would say language like this, and it works. I'm not just using a bunch of scripts that trick people into changing brain process. No, you have to do this in a way that's truisms. And there's a lot of, I can't teach a course in hypnosis, although I could with all the training, but maybe I should do something like a long version of this so that I've toyed with that because there's so much to say, but truisms is another principle. If I say, you can notice your breathing now, well, that's a truism. It's also bringing you focused on where you are. By saying that phrase, it moves you away, at least for milliseconds, away from the darkness, because it's focusing on your breathing. If I use the phrase that God loves you, well, that's a truism. Now, what if a person struggles with thinking, well, God, it doesn't feel like God loves me? Then I may actually be so bold as to say, at times it doesn't feel like God loves us. Well, we could all probably raise our hands and say yes to that as well. Sometimes we feel alone. Now, notice the word sometimes. I'm not saying all the time. I'm not saying last week, but sometimes people go, yeah, sometimes I feel alone. Sometimes we feel scared. Sometimes we do not know what to do. I wonder what it would be like to begin to just ponder the slightest possibility that this is going to be okay. That God loves us. He truly has a plan for our lives, even though we don't feel it or understand it or can see it. All we need to do is see that our hearts are right. All we need is sincerity. Well, we need more than sincerity. I'll rescript that. We begin with sincerity. I just have to have a sincere desire to get to know Him, to get to know who He is, to get to know the light, to just invite Him into my darkness. Even if and I've done a lot of pain management, amazing, strange world where you see people with such bad pain. I walk in. Should I go to a tangent? I will share this later, but I just did what is called a pattern interrupt. And that's how you induce amnesia, by the way. Any kind of pattern interrupt changes the subject so abruptly that you forget what you were talking about. That is a good way to help someone snap out of their depressed state. And that's kind of what I did with the talking about sometimes you feel bad, sometimes you don't know what is, but then immediately jump to God's love. God has a plan. Person inwardly is shaking their heads. Sometimes we have so much pain, that's where I was going with this, that I wonder what it would be like to have maybe just 5% relief. And I'm not sure whether this would be physical pain, emotional pain, relational pain. But what would we need that would give us 5% relief? It could be more, I'm not sure. It could be 25% or even 70%. But let's just start with 5% relief. So when I'm stopping that script now, but what works about that is it's such a baby step. It actually makes it so simple. And people go, I don't know why this works, but I feel 5% less pain in my shoulder or my knee or whatever. Taking baby steps actually helps us not be overwhelmed and the person successful. And just like a snowball, it begins to snowball the right direction. I had a friend at church who had a friend who was dying from cancer. And it's such a strange story because they weren't a client, but they said, Erik, you maybe can help because I heard you did pain management. Yeah, I do. And they were a Christian family, and this wonderful woman who they just loved, within 6 months just went to like skeleton. And I mean this with all due respect, just to talk about how horrific cancer. Well, I'll talk about it from the aspect. So I drive there. I walk into the room and I was shell shocked. Shell shocked. And brace yourself, because just describing things makes you start to feel it, if you're really empathetic. And I tend to be. She looked like E.T. Neck was just that. So it was just bones. And then her head and her gut. I mean, the thinnest I'd ever seen anybody. And she was rocking because of the pain. And she couldn't close her mouth, and she's breathing through her mouth. I'm surprised I didn't just pass out there right on the spot. If anybody wants to know how I get some healthy respect for I'd rather not have cancer, but give me cancer, God, if it's your will. This was it. So it took my breath away. And that's not meant to be a suggestion there. And I guess I should say a form of hypnosis is over-identifying with someone else's situation. Like I did the lemon wedge. Well, this is like I'm feeling sick and weak-kneed. I'll never forget this. It was an incredible story in a way, because in the midst of all this, she cannot speak. She's in so much pain. But she motions to a chair like she wants me to sit down. Like she's thinking of my feelings, like my comfort, and I would have just stood there. Her husband came in and says, so what do you need? Well, in the old days, I had a recording device, a fancy, high-tech, $500 tape recorder, so I could get this high quality. And what we did is I asked what her favorite Psalms were. And all I did was read the Psalms, but then I put in suggestions that I'm not sure what it's like to be where you are, and I don't know exactly, but it would be something like, I'm not sure how much discomfort. Again, we don't use the word pain. We use discomfort because the word comfort's embedded in it. Again, the unconscious mind likes to hear comfort even. And you'll know surgeons will say, how much pain will you have? Oh, you'll have some discomfort. Yeah, it'll be discomfort when we remove half your colon. Oh, okay. So I use that discomfort. I wonder, and I used all these metaphors, just prayed and asked God metaphor after metaphor of healing waters and what it must have been like to be the person lifted into the waters that could not be helped. What it must have been like to be the person who was blind but could see. Well, she calmed down. And that's good hypnotherapy, is when you look at your client, you see how they're responding. If they're responding in a way that viscerally you see them go another direction, you quickly say, or not. You might begin to relax in your own way or find some comfort in your own way. It might be through thinking of a garden or a beach. If they don't look like they like beach, maybe something bad happened at the beach, then you go, or not. So you're always checking in with them. And what happens is they start to calm down. And then when you notice that they're calming down, and even though we're talking pain management, this is a metaphor for any kind of problem we have. When you start to feel better and you can see it, it's like, I would say, maybe you're feeling better or not. I wonder what it would be like to begin to feel even more better, just by allowing yourself in any way you need to begin to feel just a tad bit better. And when you see them get better, and then you say, if you're able to do that, how amazing it is that God has designed you in this way, with a mind that wants to love Him with all your mind, all your heart, all your soul. So even your unconscious mind, which could have some not so good things, you want to bend those desires to God. So they get better. And now, we talked a lot about hip. Oh, and this woman got better. They made the tape so they could play it over. And it turns out half the family really, really liked it because it calmed them down. So, is there a downside to this? Yes, of course there is. A tool is just a tool, and the problem with the hypnotherapy world is, apart from God, they want to make it into a religion. Like this will solve everything, and their understanding is it presupposes that mankind has this inner God or inner higher self that can solve all his problems through hypnosis. No, I don't believe that in the slightest. That would be like saying I don't even need a doctor. I can heal everything myself just by, oh, I don't even need nutrition. All I need to do is do inner hypnosis to strengthen my immune system. No, it doesn't work that way. It's just a tool, and it can be used for God's glory, or it can be used for negative. Like the dark side of hypnosis, and I don't call it hypnotherapy, is like satanic ritual abuse. People that have been hypnotized by people, politicians, and you'll get a laugh out of this, but they are going to be very, very vague. What do you want to do for the economy? Oh, I want it to be strong and solid and have money for everybody, health care for everybody. It's going to be universal. It's going to be good. And no one can say no to any of that. No one's going to say, no, I don't want that. What's funny is if politicians were smarter today, that sounds judgmental, they would not be so specific. If they say, well, I think we should do this and get rid of that, then it's like, well, I don't like that. That's creepy. Yeah, yeah. Gone are the days where they were more vague. But when you notice, like Miss America pageants, where they say, Miss Alabama, what should you do if you have kids in the Deep South struggling with racism and racial tension? And that's now a hot topic today. She's not going to say, well, I first would do and say something real specific. No, it's always going to end up we're arm in arm with brotherhood and loving kindness and understanding and peace and joy, and like, sounds good to me. So that's hypnotic language. The detrances is often specific language. So if I say, I'm wondering what it's like to have a nice sensation in your body that could give you more comfort, that's fluffy. If I said, I wonder what it's like to feel the sensation in your wrists, well, then your attention's directed there and you actually feel out of that. Any drug addiction, denial is a trance. They're looking at all the positives but not the negatives. There's time distortion. They're not looking at that this keeps on repeating itself. So it's a form of amnesia. So in some ways, you're detrancing people out of that. Yeah. No, it's actually, I don't really use it much. I should use it more. I might even start to think that way. There's many ways to think different about problems. But I do like the idea that we spent some time talking about stuck state and resource state. And that stuck state is anything we do or experience or a visual or something we say to ourselves that gets us in that stuck state. And if it's very hypnotic language, like, oh no, I wonder, I'll be in this forever. When will this end? Think of a little kid in a car when they're, oh, this is time distortion. If it's 2 hours to grandma's house and they ask every 2 minutes, it's going to be a long trip. And yeah, if you're focused on the pain will increase. It's just the way the mind is. It's very directional. If you focus on the pleasantness of the trip or the good thing you'll get at the end of your dentist visit, if you're a kid, the treat, the whatever. Oh, I went to the dentist and at one time they gave you a hand treatment. Very smart people. You dipped your hands in this wax. And in hypnotherapy, there's a technique called you just notice your hands. And this works, and you just go on and on about your hands. Increasing warmth in your hands will calm you down. So you dip your hands in the wax, and then you go like this. They'd wrap them, and you get lavender oil, whatever. Well, then in theory, you're focusing on your hands instead of what they're doing to your mouth. I thought, well, sure, that's fun. And then my hands get sweatier and sweatier and slimy, and it's kind of like, well, it's distracting me. I'm not thinking about as much this as I'm focused on that. Again, why did they give you a TV set to watch? And why do they play nice music versus something that sounds like a jackhammer? See, and some of this is hilarious once you start to get it. And you'll see it all around, like TV. Um, Not TV anymore, but videos. They're so fast. It's because it's hypnotic. Oh, TV food shows. Yeah, no, it's really quite interesting. And yeah, do I want to be terrorized tonight? Okay, I'll watch this Jurassic Park. And the music puts you in a state of adrenalization. There is music you can immediately go to, adagio for strings. It's so used for sadness, it will make you sad. If you listen to happy Mozart music, it makes you happy. So we can't always snap ourselves out of it immediately, although the more practice you get at this, the better it works. It's a practice, and it takes months and maybe years, but and I'll finish with this because it's like one big ball of string. There's so many things. So we'll finish with suggestibility, because I did have a kind viewer share that he says, he says, oh goodness, my mouth is salivating just by mentioning the lemon. Good, yeah, good for you. That means, well, you're suggestible. And that can be a really good thing. Well, actually, it's a wonderful thing to know. Are you easily suggestible or you're less suggestible? I know I'm easily suggestible, so it gives me a lot of choice in life. If someone's trying to sell me and they're so good at talking about how would you like to see this in your kitchen, and can you see it now, how happy your wife would be, etc. Sure. But I now know to not be in trance and decide to buy it or not buy it based on something else. So I usually say, I'd like to sleep on this. I'm trying to think. Someone did something to me that really made me, I was pretty upset. I want to get the story straight. But, maybe it's not meant to be, but it reminds me of the earliest story where we're at a gym membership, and the salesperson had the audacity to point to my wife and says, so do you want her to be sick? Do you want her to really die because she doesn't have the opportunity to go to a gym membership? And this is 35 years ago. And it's like, I did not study hypnosis then, so I did not know that he's planting a suggestion that if I don't buy this, I don't love my wife. Maybe we'll develop this topic in future sessions, because see, there's so much to say about this. This is what we call complex equivalence, that something equals something. It's this, and he's just creating a cause effect. And I think we struggle with this at times. We think, well, this caused this and this caused this. And that's kind of a trance thing. But someone recently was doing this, and it really kind of upset me. They were trying to sell me more something or other. And they were using my wife to do it. And it really bugged me. It's like, don't do that. Yeah, that's suggestibility. Now, if I read the newspaper and I can feel sick because of someone else, yeah, that's suggestibility. If you suggest to me that you're going to be fine. Oh, gosh, I'm really on a roll. And I guess you could just always not watch if you want to. I try to keep things to an hour. So here's 2 interesting stories. I've had this journey into studying the mind-body connection, having stuffed some of my emotions into my body. As I am tallying up all the things I've had, it's just astounding. Like, I've had chronic muscle tension. I had TMJ after I had a dental thing, a wisdom tooth pulled. After a wisdom tooth pull, after I had a crown, I had TMJ. It lasted for 3 months. Yeah, I I was having even a massage therapist try to do that. Well, I did not know it at the time. This was purely emotional. Been to the dentist like 3 times. Bless his heart, he's a nice guy. He said, you're just going to maybe need to talk to an oral surgeon. It's like, oh, gee, I just think that that's overkill. Went to the oral surgeon. 10 minutes, he said, you know what? 80% of this just goes away by itself. Bye. That day, it just went away. And I've never really had it. Actually, until I started reading the book and working on the exercises and my Unlearn Your Pain, and I thought, I'm getting TMJ. It was funny, but nothing like that. It was like lockjaw. Okay. And I knew nothing about the mind-body connection. Another story. I had pain in my shoulder. I thought it was because I had this story that I was sleeping on one side. It was this side because I have a CPAP. Boy, you're getting a lot of TMI, too much information today. But that's how and it was frozen, like it hurt. I mean, it was just hurt. And I remember trying to do exercises. Let's see if I can show you this, where I'm supposed to wrench this behind my back. And I'm like crying, like I can't do this. I had a nice physical therapist. Really nice guy. He helped me with my back surgery. And I had devices that were attached to a door trying to stretch this out. Anyway, I'm 4 weeks into this. He says, well, Erik, a lot of these frozen shoulders just go away by themselves. It went away. It just went away. And now I can do this just fine. And I do this kind of for kicks. What happened there? What happened to where I had physical structures that were so tight, so fearful? Now I have a lot better explanation, having read some books and gotten training in this whole thing. That's the unconscious mind at play. And it's a hypnotic phenomena in that it's not hypnosis, but it shows you the power of suggestion that someone just says to me, hey, this could be that. Now, here's my down negative talk about the medical community, and I think it's okay, and I'd say this about therapy community. A lot of doctors, I don't know if they're well-meaning or not. I'll just say that this is what they do, is they will talk disease, and you feel sick, you feel scared, and you run and go take their pill, or you take their what is it called? Surgery. Now, I'll tell you a true story, yeah. And you could always leave if you need to leave, but I had an attack of diverticulitis as a 37-year-old. Kind of shocking, kind of scary, but I did. And because, well, it wasn't scary. I mean, one clinic said just take fiber, okay. Then I thought, something might not be right. So I went to a good man. He's a good surgeon. He gave me 2 surgeries. Had an earlier surgery, which I won't get into, but I went to him and he took a look around. Oh, I had a CAT scan. And he says, look, I'm going to scare you. Those were his words. I'm going to scare you. You have a condition that if you don't treat by us removing 6 to 8 inches of your colon, you have kind of a walking time bomb, that if you have another attack, it's more likely to rupture on the outside instead of the inside of the wall. It goes outwards, you get peritonitis, and you have 20 minutes, and if you live, you get to wear a bag. Well, I'm so suggestible, I didn't even need that. And what did that end into? Well, I logically, prayerfully did some research and did see that truly Anybody under 40 who has diverticulitis has a more virulent form. And yes, the elective surgery is a good idea, which I did. And the reality is, since 22 or 3 years, I haven't had a problem by God's grace. I stay away from seeds and stuff. But that wasn't without some strange things happening. Like, I went back to the earlier clinic and they said they're recommending surgery. And I did think, is he just trying to sell me a surgery? Because, why not? Why wouldn't he? They said, well, we don't recommend surgery. So they really just take this, and I could see the article, so I was hedging more towards the person I liked, which was the guy who said, I'm going to scare you. This other clinic, I won't name who they are, but I've had nothing but negative with them. And that could be a trance, and that I just look for the negative, but I keep having it happen. So I go back to the doctor, and he says, look, have them put it in. Well, then I called them back, and they said, no, we'd wait till you have two more hospitalizations with an attack, and then we'd recommend surgery. And this doctor says, look, have them putting in writing, and then you can see the living. He didn't say living, but he said, put it in writing. I decided to have the surgery, as you know, and it worked out great. But all that fear and suggestibility, so I was walking on eggshells until I had that surgery. I felt like I was constantly going to have an attack. And all you have to do is suggest anything to someone's gut and they start to feel it. So, guess how God's providence works? Well, I'm all scheduled for the surgery. I have to do this cleanse, and that has its own thing to it. And I had to do that for another time earlier so they could look around in a colonoscopy, so I've already been through that. I get sick with the flu or something not good while having the prep time. I call him. I said, I'm sick. And at the time, I just wanted to get it done. I said, well, I'm sick, but I'm cleaned out anyway. I might as well do. He says, no, you can't have any sickness, so we have to postpone this. And now I'm sick. Or like, So then, I think it was a month. Again, I was not trusting in God's providence and not trying to control the things I can't. I was trying to control things I cannot change. Anyway, I remember calling him because I was feeling an attack. I was feeling like, I think I'm having an attack. I called him embarrassingly, and he says, yeah, just take a nap. He said, literally, take some pain reliever and just go to bed. Okay. He might have known me. Well, he knew me after a while. I've known him for years, and I still go see him. My point in all this is when it comes to our health, some of us are very suggestible. Others of us could hit by anything and, I'll be fine. And the coronavirus is a good example of this. I should probably pray and think about how people respond to the coronavirus based on how suggestible and how hypnotic they are. And we have mass hypnosis going on easily from the media. And if you want to go, I don't want to know anything about hypnosis, great, but then you're a sitting duck, is how I would see it. I think everybody should understand what it is so that they could learn how not to be hypnotized by situations and to pick the right words they want to listen to. And then they're going to see that this language is in our prayers. It's in the Bible. Jesus spoke in metaphor. He said, set your mind on things that are pure and lovely and good report. What does it mean to set your mind? The problem is if that's all we do, it becomes a psychological technique, and that's not a good idea. It should be used as a tiny little tool. But once you get over the mysticalness of it, or the so-called mystical, then you go, this is just no different than me using cognitive behavioral therapy, which actually everything has, that technique actually has hypnosis embedded into it. You're changing from thinking one way to another thinking. So, well, I'm a little bit on a roll. It was a topic that's hard to squeeze into just an hour, but forgive me for being long-winded. I wish you well. I wish you a peaceful evening. I wish you really good things. And I don't know what those good things are, but I do know that God is good, and if you are open to seeing them, you'll begin to see them. So until next week, I love you guys. You take care and have a good night.